entering the city, the pair found themselves walking shoulder to shoulder through the bustling crowd. Suddenly, Lan Wangji asked, "How is the curse mark?" Jinling was buried too close to our good friend and absorbed a lot of resentful energy. It's faded a bit, but it hasn't entirely disappeared. We'll probably have to find the whole body, or at least the head, before we'll be able to figure out how to eliminate it completely. It won't cause problems in any case. Their good friend was none other than the dismembered corpse. Because they didn't know its owner's true identity, Wei Wuxian had proposed referring to him as their good friend. After hearing the suggestion, Lan Wangji had said nothing, but he also didn't object, which was practically tacit acceptance of the appellation. Though of course, he would never use it himself. "How much is a bit?" Lan Wangji asked. Wei Wuxian mimed a distance. "A bit is a bit. How should I explain it? Do you want me to take my clothes off and show you?" Lan Wangji's eyebrows twitched slightly, as though he was genuinely concerned that Wei Wuxian was going to start stripping right in the middle of the street. "Take them off only after we return," he said quietly. Wei Wuxian let out a hearty laugh, then turned and walked a couple of steps backward. Earlier, when he had been hasty to escape, he had gone to great lengths to offend Lan Wangji, hoping that the man would get fed up of him and leave. Thus, he had repeatedly made an embarrassing spectacle of himself by playing the fool and the lunatic. Anyone else reflecting on such past deeds would have undoubtedly felt too ashamed to show their face in public once their identity was revealed. Only people like Wei Wuxian had skin so thick that they could behave as though nothing had happened. Indeed, if someone possessing even a shred of dignity found themselves in his shoes, they wouldn't have committed the outrageous acts in the first place. They wouldn't have snuck into Lan Wangji's bed in the middle of the night, or insisted on sharing a bath with him, or applied makeup and then pestered him with questions about whether they were beautiful, like an exotic flower that needed to be pampered. As long as Wei Wuxian acted as though he didn't remember any of it, Lan Wangji would naturally never bring it up by his own volition. They could compartmentalize the memory and continue as though nothing had happened. Indeed, since his identity had been revealed, Wei Wuxian hadn't joked around in this manner until today. Once he was finished laughing, his expression quickly grew serious. Han Guangjun, the person who tossed the arm into more mana so that it would attack your clan's juniors, and the person who sewed our dear friend's legs on another corpse and buried it in the wall. Do you think they're on the same side? In both his past and present lives, Wei Wuxian had called Lan Wangji directly by his given name, Lan Zhan, from the bottom of his heart. However, he had been calling Lan Wangji by his title for the past several days, and consequently, it had become a habit. Moreover, his use of the appellation had a kind of feigned propriety that gave it a strangely comical flavor. Thus, he continued to half seriously, half jokingly call his companion Han Guangjun when out in public. "There are two separate factions," Lan Wangji replied. "Looks like we have the same viewpoint. Whoever went through such pains to sew the legs to another corpse and hide the whole thing in the wall must not have wanted the legs to be discovered. That being the case, they wouldn't intentionally lob the left arm at the Gusulan clanspeople, since doing so would inevitably draw attention and lead to an investigation. One painstakingly hides legs away, the other impudently shows off the arm, afraid that it isn't noticed. It shouldn't be one group of people." Wei Wuxian had said everything there was to say. Thus, Lan Wangji appeared to have nothing to add, but still replied with a Wei Wei Wuxian turned back around and spoke while walking. The person who hid the legs is familiar with the Qinghe clan's saber hall tradition, whereas the person who sicked the arm on your juniors understands how the Gusulan clan operates. I'm afraid the future isn't going to be so straightforward. The number of secrets grows and grows. We will approach it one step at a time, Lan Wangji said. How did you recognize me? Wei Wuxian asked. Think it over yourself. For a period of time, the questions and answers flew back and forth incessantly. Originally, Wei Wuxian had intended to catch Lan Wangji off guard and induce him to blurt out the answer to his question. But in the end, he still failed. However, he was not discouraged and jumped to the next topic like lightning. I've never been to Yueyang before. Up to this point, I've always been the one looking for people and asking around about local affairs. This time, I'm going to be lazy. Han Guangjun, would you mind terribly if I troubled you with the task of making the relevant inquiries? Lan Wangji turned and immediately began walking away. Hurriedly, Wei Wuxian said, Please wait, Han Guangjun. Dare I ask where you're headed? To the Cultivation clan stationed here, Lan Wangji turned and said. Wei Wuxian clutched the tassel attached to the hilt of Lan Wangji's sword and pulled him back. Why are you looking for them? This is their territory. Even if they know, they wouldn't tell you. Either they have no idea how to deal with it and are hiding the whole thing to avoid embarrassment, or they're holding things up by the skin of their teeth and will be dead set against letting outsiders meddle. Honorable Han Guangjun, this Wei fellow has no intention of heaping discredit upon you. But without me, you'd be hopeless making inquiries this way. If you managed to learn anything, now that would be strange. The words were perhaps a bit rude, but Lan Wangji's gaze softened, and he uttered a quiet, Wei Wuxian laughed. What Even after that, still But his stomach leapt with joy as he silently criticized Lan Wangji. He only knows how to say Turns out he's still boring after all. In that case, how ought one to make inquiries? Lan Wangji asked. Wei Wuxian pointed sideways. Go there, of course. He was pointing at a long, broad street whose sides were filled high and low with ostentatious shop signs and floating scarlet banners, dazzling the eye. The doors to every store had been flung wide open, and the rows and rows of round black jugs on display spilled out of the shops and onto the road. Waiters, holding silver trays filled with little liquor bowls, hovered nearby, thumping their chests and shouting recommendations for their respective establishments to passers-by. The aroma of wine wafted over the entire street. It was no wonder Wei Wuxian walked ever more slowly as he neared. By the time they reached the street entrance, he was completely unable to move and even dragged Han Guangjun to a halt. The waiters who work at these types of places are usually young, clever, and diligent, Wei Wuxian said solemnly. Plus they're around so many customers every day, so they'll have heard all sorts of chatter. If there's a weird story flying around, there's no way it'll escape their ears and eyes. Lan Wangji let out an and did not object. But you clearly just want to drink was written all over his face. Wei Wuxian pretended not to understand his expression. Still tugging Lan Wangji's sword tassel, he stepped onto the liquor street, his eyes filled with a golden glitter. Immediately, he was surrounded by 5 or 6 waiters, all from different stores, each gabbing more enthusiastically than the next. Try some. This is the He family's locally famous brew. Young master, try this one. It's free to taste. If you enjoy it, come and visit our little store and buy some. This liquor doesn't smell strong, but when it hits your stomach, you'll feel it. If you can still stand after you're finished, I'll adopt your family name." Upon hearing this, Wei Wuxian said, "Sure." The waiter passed him a bowl of liquor, and he raised his head and downed it. Laughing, Wei Wuxian showed the empty bowl back to the waiter. "So you'll take my family name, huh?" Surprisingly, the waiter showed no hint of trepidation. He lifted his head high and said in hearty spirits, "I meant if you finish off a whole jug." In that case, give me 3 jugs." The waiter hadn't expected such a response. Overjoyed, he rushed back into the shop. "When you do business, you have to do the business first, of course," Wei Wuxian said to Lan Wangji. "The other stuff you can chat about later. It's much easier to get them to open their mouths once the business is done." Lan Wangji pulled out his wallet and paid the bill. The two entered the shop. Inside, the center of the shop floor was filled with wooden tables and chairs, arranged to provide customers with a place to rest and chat. A different waiter running about inside caught sight of Lan Wangji's clothing and manner. Filled with awe, he dared not seem careless in the presence of this celestial being. Thus he gathered up his strength and wiped down a table and some stools with great diligence. Only then did he have the nerve to gesture for Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian to sit. The latter placed 2 jugs of liquor next to his feet, and holding the third in his hand, he struck up a friendly conversation with the waiter who had brought them in. He then dove right into the issue at hand and asked whether there was anything strange happening in the area. The waiter was quite talkative. "What kind of strange things?" he asked, rubbing his hands. "Haunted homes, neglected graves, dismembered bodies, things like that." The waiter's eyes whirled. "Oh, what do you two do for a living? You and him?" "Haven't you guessed already?" Wei Wuxian replied. "Of course," the waiter said, his gaze clear with comprehension. "It's easy to guess. You two sirs must be a pair of those cultivators who fly around everywhere, stirring up the clouds and controlling the mists. Especially the one beside you. Among ordinary folks, I've never seen such a beautiful person," Wei Wuxian finished with a smile. The waiter laughed. "If you say it that way, you'll make this young master unhappy." "Okay, strange things. Yes, strange things have happened around here, but not these days. This was 10 years ago. If you go in that direction, leave the city, and keep going 1 or 2 kilometers, you'll be able to see a quite nice-looking house. I don't know if the sign's still up, but that place belongs to the Chang clan." "What's wrong with it?" Wei Wuxian asked. "The entire clan living there was exterminated," the waiter said. "Since you asked about strange happenings, of course I'm going to pick the strangest of them all. Every single person in the household died. No survivors. On top of that, people say they all died of fright." Upon hearing this, Lan Wangji looked pensive, as though something had just occurred to him. However, Wei Wuxian didn't notice and continued his inquiries. "Is there a cultivation clan stationed in this area?" "Only some kind of cruel, terrifying, fierce ghost or spirit could scare a whole clan to death. Normally, a clan of cultivators wouldn't tolerate any such thing appearing in their territory. Not every clan had secret troubles like the Cheng He clan." "Yes, how couldn't there be?" the waiter said. "Then how did they handle the problem at the time?" Wei Wuxian asked. "Handle?" The waiter threw his cleaning towel on his shoulder and sat down with him. With great solemnity, he finally revealed the information that he had kept hidden for so long in the conversation. "Young master, you must know. What was the name of the cultivation clan that had been stationed in Yueyang?" "Chang," They were the ones who died. They're all gone, every last one. So who was left to deal with the situation? The exterminated clan was the Cultivation clan stationed here. Wei-Wuxian had never heard of any Chang clan in Yueyang, so they couldn't have been a big name, prestigious clan. Nonetheless, a horrifying event like the extinction of an entire clan was certainly no small matter. Promptly, he continued to question the waiter. How were all of the Changs killed? I only know the rumors, the waiter said. One night, the sound of something slamming against the door suddenly echoed from the direction of the Chang household. Something slamming against the door? Yes, the noise was so loud it made the sky shake. Inside the house, you could hear people screaming and crying as though everyone was trapped inside. Too strange, isn't it? Doors are always bolted from the inside, so if someone wanted to get out of the house, they could just open the door, right? So why were they slamming the door? Even if you do that, it's not like the people outside can do anything. Plus, if you couldn't get out through the door, why wouldn't you climb over the wall instead? The people outside had second thoughts about getting involved. Everyone knew that the Chang clan was the most powerful clan around. They were cultivators, after all. The head of their clan, I think his name was Chang Ping. He had a sword that could fly, so let him stand on it and fly. If something even they couldn't deal with had really happened inside, wouldn't an ordinary person be asking for death by meddling? So no one looked for a ladder or tried to hop over the wall to get a look inside. As the night passed just like that, the wailing inside gradually grew quieter. The next day, the sun came out, and the Chang household's main gate opened on its own. The entire household was dead. Every one of the 10 or 20 family members and the 50 or so servants, some still sitting, some laying on the ground, surrounded by ejected viscera and bile. All had died of fright. The owner of the liquor store turned and shouted at the waiter, "Do you want to die? Instead of working, you're yapping away about death, death, death. Stories that happened years ago." "Another 5 jugs, Wei-Wuxian said. Lanongji paid enough for 10 jugs, and the owner turned around again, grinning from ear to ear. "Do a good job taking care of the customers. Don't go running around everywhere," he urged the waiter. "Keep going," Wei-Wuxian said. Free of the fear of consequences, the waiter put all that he had into the rest of the story, his voice rising and falling along with the tale. Afterwards, for a long, long time, anyone who passed near the Chang house at night would hear the sound of something slamming against the door. Think about it. These cultivators who can stir up the clouds and control the mist, who have fought countless monsters and seen countless ghosts, if they were killed by fright, well, how scary is that? If you walk around at night, you're bound to run across a ghost sooner or later. Even after they were buried, you could still hear them slamming against their coffins. Although the leader of the clan, Chang Ping, was apparently out that evening and hadn't come back, so he managed to avoid the calamity. "But didn't you say the entire clan died?" Wei-Wuxian asked.